Hey, if you're watching this, welcome. And let's get started. Let's not waste any time. First things first, though, let's really take a second to look at how theory and practice are so different. Have you ever noticed how some brands just take off, right? Sometimes you can't even understand it. You've got Supreme. Slap Supreme on a brick, it's all of a sudden $1,000. Slap Supreme on a hoodie, now all of a sudden it's $1,200. Airbnb, literally doing something that's been around for years, which is known as subleasing, dominates, literally own its market. You have Uber. Uber is literally a company that when it started, there was a finance professional expert, PhD actually, forecasted that it would fail. Not what 12 months after that prediction, Uber was at a $36 million valuation after launching. Now, if you if you actually have read all those articles, etc., you can sit there and be like, oh, they did growth hacking, they did this. Well, look, at the end of the day, what they really did was carve out a market and brand. I know it sounds simple, but that's at its very core what happened. So welcome to this video. I decided to put this together for you because, I love what I do, but most importantly, one thing that I really seem to enjoy is that, after years of reverse engineering problems for my clients, problems for myself, I'm starting to realize the problem starts at the top, i.e., the founders, the teams, whatever. So I created a first ever hack factory for entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs. Okay, so my ultimate goal is to help you build a game changing mind, life, and business. Now, if you don't know what an intrapreneur is a really awesome strategy. It is essentially an entrepreneur within a organization. I have played both entrepreneur and intrapreneur. I have been a growth strategist for many, many years. I've also have been a growth hacker and a chief marketing officer. By the way, they're not all the same thing. So let's start here. The very foundation of what we're about to talk about, the strength. Pretty sure you know who Elon Musk is. I'm sure you are aware of his successes, his ballsiness, whatever you want to call it, but it all comes down to the same thing, brand. Let's take you, for example. If I were to ask 2 or 3 of your friends, how would you describe him or her? What are they going to say? What are the 3 words they're going to say? What are the 3 phrases they're going to think of? That is your personal brand. Okay? Now, you can turn around and, I don't know, get a makeover, change the way you look. After a while, you'll be able to change, but ultimately, that is your brand. Now, if you don't know who I am, Catriel C. Sarfati, nice to meet you. I'm also known as Nerd Gone Rogue on social media, Instagram, etc. I've had a really great time sharing a lot of the behind the scenes of what I do and really put together a lot of what normally gets looked at as way complex. I love to simplify so that the talented can take it, be empowered, educate themselves, and put it into action. I cannot stress enough how many times I've met amazingly talented people that have a superior product and their service to what's out there. But alas, politics, investors, whatever the reason, there is another player out there beating them at that industry because they have more money, because they have the right connections. Well, if there's anything you've learned by now, social media is great. I think that's an understatement of this case. But if you are somebody in an industry, you're not huge, it doesn't matter. The idea is if you get your why and your brand promise straight and you're able to execute on delivering constant problem solving, then you're the right person to watch this video. So again, what brings me here is that my background is in behavioral psychology, business development, and I have been an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur myself. And really, I'm just fascinated, with people work, the way that people live, the way that they think, and of course, that has bled into things of consumer behavior. Why do people buy what they buy? Why do they make the decisions that they make? So you're going to be seeing a little bit of a behind the scenes of how I operate, my colleagues operate, and frankly, because I have worked with a lot of these big companies, you're going to kind of get a little bit of a sneak peek as to how these companies are able to grow so quick. Now, again, one of the cool parts, as I mentioned, as a solo show, I have been fortunate to really get out there and just, I guess you can call it hack different industries. And it's gotten me in the Real Deal magazine, which is a real estate magazine in New York, Just Lux. And those two specifically, I cite them because that's where I got started. I started off in real estate as a kid. And very, very quickly, let's face it, the odds were against us, right? Odds are against us. It's controlled by a few people. And then here comes this scrappy little kid and starts calling, noticing indicators, markers, etc., starts calling markets and starts giving that information to players with less money, leverage resources and money, and then all of a sudden they're able to make this an amazing neighborhood, right? They're able to do what the big guys are able to do with less money. And that's exactly what landed me on those two, which then led to Money Magazine, which then, led me to working with other amazing people in different arenas, different industries, which got me on Entrepreneur Magazine and Forbes. So literally why I said in the beginning, if I'm able to sit here and make all these mistakes and share them with you, I want you guys to benefit, really get out there, because at the end of the day, if you're able to disrupt your industry, everyone's happier. So these are the top 5 mistakes that we're going to be going over. Now, I will preface this, okay? The first 3 are going to be the easiest to spot, but the ones that are going to be the ones that you're going to look for in another company. The final 2 are ultimately about the team. So if it applies to your company, you have the ability to change it. I will also, by the way, be at about the 3/4 mark of this video, I will actually be sharing with you a brand promise exercise that I actually do in the initial consultation as I'm walking into a company, or if I just joined a venture, or if I'm launching something. I'm going to share it with you. It's not actually hard. It's simple, but super effective. And I actually remember working with companies like Smashburger, companies like $1 Million Listing, etc. And we did this exact exercise. And the proof is in the pudding. It's blowing up. It's amazing. It's successful. So, who is this for? If you're watching up until now, if any of these is you, stick along. If it's not any of you, keep watching, because you might notice this and you might actually realize that you might be a lot better at this than you realize. That's just my personal thing. I love being, that anarchist. So again, entrepreneurs, executives in charge of departments, startups, pay attention. Marketing and brand managers, I love working with them. And I love working with you guys and girls because you guys are good at what you do. But like any amazing chef, you get very close to your project. You're in the kitchen, you're in the trenches. So imagine having another pair of eyeballs. Imagine being able to automate your process. Imagine being able to minimize the risk and to quantify it to the rest of your team. Hey, when I put in $1, we're going to get 3. And I don't mean I spend $1 on Facebook ads. I'm talking about a cost print, etc., that sort of thing. So, moving along. Mistake number 1 and my all-time favorite, no company structure. And I say this is my favorite, excuse me, because it leaves the most clues. So, how would you look at a company and say, man, they really don't have their shit together? Whenever I ask this question, I tend to hear, oh, they have bad customer service, or, things like that. They're not wrong. So let me share this with you real quick. There's a company a few years ago. They were entering an emerging market. Let's face it, they had every indicator that they were going to be amazing in this industry because it was on the cutting edge. But here's the thing. The company structure, unfortunately, and this happens with a lot of companies, is that we're human, right? And old habits die hard. So the way that, and by the way, startups are facing this right now, the people that are founding these companies are coming from other companies. And I'm pretty sure you've heard that saying that pisses off a lot of people. Oh my God, you're so much like your father. You're so much like your mother. It boils us, pisses us off. But at the end of the day, old habits die hard. So this company sitting there, bleeding edge, they're poised to make a killing. But the way that they structured their team was, that's my friend. This one was my roommate. That one kind of knows what they're doing. And this one is my spouse. Now, how does that start to show? How does it start to bleed? Well, I remember sitting with them as they're going through their fires, multiple ones that they're putting out. And guess what we notice? They've got shipping errors. They've got product arriving broken. They've got product being delivered to their home. They've got the pickups being picked up from their home. So when someone has something to send back or a complaint, it goes to the house. Why is that a problem? Well, for starters, you're putting out your personal information. Number two, bad customer service. Now, this company is literally sitting there just scratching their heads. They're pulling out their hair. They're like, we have to fix this. And what are they doing? They're relying on Joe Schmo and, and John Doe and whatever. And ultimately, if you put somebody that is not well versed and experienced in a position, I'm not saying they're all going to fail, but in this case, customer service was so bad, right, that affiliates weren't being paid. Shipments were being broken. People were waiting days to hear back about inquiries. And not just wholesale orders, but actual customers who paid them were sometimes waiting up to 6 days to hear about the status of their order, a mischarge, right? So, what does this mean for you? So, ultimately, by the way, that company it cost them many relationships. And frankly, they ultimately became unstable. It's not sustainable. So, in your case, let's say this is your company, right? This is what you look for. But if you're in an industry and you want to notice who's really your competition and who's not, here's what I would do in your shoes. Some weaknesses to look for are bottlenecks. So a very fun exercise that I love to do is I will look at the reviews. I will see if they sound, how do I put it? People have a pattern, right? So imagine like you go on your friend's social media profile and you make a bunch of comments as that person. It won't be that hard for a few other people to notice, yeah, that's not them. That's probably someone else that wrote it. Well, that also shows in reviews, right? Second exercise I love to do is I will look at the way that their affiliates, ambassadors feel, the way that they post, the way that they actually try to push their product. Okay? And what I mean by that is, I'm pretty sure you've seen those really fucking corny posts where it's like somebody holding a bottle and they're like, I love this product, use my coupon code. That basically tells you that their structure is not really good, because whomever is in charge, if they are even that much capable, they're not really able to execute because someone above them is stopping them. Or that tells you that there is no one that is capable of executing that, and it's just left to like a group consensus. Another thing is, if you're able to find any negative reviews about them, find out how they fixed it. Very important, by the way. And last but not least, the most telling of all is their social media. Now, I'm pretty sure you're aware that we can hire people to run our pages, right? We can sit there and pay somebody on Fiverr or Upwork, whatever the case may be, and get a few things done. The thing is, when there's no brand message, when there's no brand promise, etc., the page is corny, right? There's low engagement. They probably bought a bunch of followers. They probably bought engagement. And if they didn't, they have almost, by the way, notice I'm not saying the number of followers unless it's bought. Really what you want to look at is their engagement. Are they connecting with their audience? And if they're not, then that tells you that whomever is running that show, steering that ship, has not taken the time to lead their team effectively. Or if they're like a 2-3 man show, they're not actually putting the priorities on the thing that's actually going to serve their customer best. All right? This is fun stuff. Mistake number 2. Okay, so you heard me say fun stuff, but the thing is that doing what I do, this one for me, man, it's like catnip. Um, and frankly, it's not my all-time favorite. I won't go ahead and say that, but I will say this: it's the easiest way for you to grow your business. And by the way, if this applies to you, this will be the easiest way for someone like myself or my colleagues to come along and just crush you. Not knowing the difference. So look, branding, marketing, advertising. I'm sorry to tell you, they're not all the same thing. And I speak on this extensively on my Instagram, Nerd Gone Rogue. They're not the same. One is what you do, one is what you say you do, and one is what when people think you do. Again, I started off with what would people say about you. You might notice maybe they're on the money. Cool. But there's so much that they don't know about you, right? Or there's so much that they haven't realized that you've been doing. Guess what? That's literally what happens to brands, companies, except that that discrepancy causes the miscommunication. It causes lost revenue and money on the table. Now, what is the difference? It's growth teams. That's really what it comes down to. And growth teams, who uses them? Included some of the companies, some I've worked with, and frankly, some others I'm just a fan of how they operate. You've got SurveyMonkey, Tesla, LinkedIn, and look at every single one. They're in their own industry per se, but they're crushing it, they're leading it. But what makes them different? Some of them, I've actually had them tell me, oh, I have another one that's exactly the same thing. Cool, then why are 5 million using the other one? So in action, what would that look like? And I'm actually going to pick something that just happened not too long ago, and I'm pretty sure you've seen the rise of influencers, right? Some people love them, some people hate them, and frankly, I think I've lost count of how many businesses will tell me, God, how the fuck do I work with an influencer? What's the right price to pay? How do I know if this is good, etc.? Well, the biggest reason that this confusion exists is because a lot of these influencers are not actually well versed. Some of them got big from their looks. Some of them got big from their butts. So look, here's a very, very quick example that I just went through. Influencer, millions of followers. They're introduced to me from a company. The company's telling me they don't really know how much to pay them. By the way, if this sounds like you, I feel for you. So they're worried. They got millions of followers, Kat. We got to use them. I just don't know how much to pay them. And when I did ask them how much to pay, they quoted me $1,500. That's a lot of money for some people. For some others, it's not. Here's the thing. As soon as I saw the influencer, I went on the page. I said, red flag. This influencer has built her following completely on booty pics. Sure, millions of followers. But sex appeal. I mean, ultimately, it's just selling sex. And you're sitting here with something that's supposed to be for health and wellness. Frankly, you're not going to see traction because they don't actually have a brand. They're just like reality TV or whatever the case may be. People are not really there to engage, or they're just there to consume. So if you suddenly put a bottle of your stuff in that picture, are they going to actually give a shit? Will they get annoyed? Will they keep scrolling? Right? So as we go along, they're pissed off. Influencers, we talk, and I tried to state this to them, you know. So what do? I think we can make it work. We got followers, blah blah. What they end up doing is trying out an experiment. They pay the money, they do some posts, and lo and fucking behold, there is no sales. 3 sales in 6 days is what they got from a page with millions of followers. But why is that? Well, like I said in the beginning, they built this page based on sex. So guess what? That page is primarily male followers, over 90%. When they finally let me look behind the curtain, it was 93%. So the people, the intended audience, are less than 18%. But because they have been recently trying to pivot and put other stuff. Their engagement went low, the algorithm fucked them, and then guess what? Then they actually, sorry, they never actually got to talk to the people that they were intending to. Well, it's no surprise they only sold 3 products. And of course, I can keep going on and on because this is a horrible story. No one was happy. Everyone was pissed. Um, but the thing at the end of the day is what you want to really stand there and notice from this is brand. Okay? So within your company, within your idea, your startup, etc., this is what a well-oiled machine looks like. This is your sales machine. Now notice it says marketing in there, but it's still your sales machine because ultimately these are the moving parts. This is essentially what a growth team will be comprised of. You'll have someone on product design, testing, feedback. You'd have someone on marketing, which means someone who's good at psychology and analytics and consumer behavior and social listening. You've got data because they're going to collect that for the marketing department. Then you've got someone on partnerships. And their job, very much like data, is also compiling data to see how can I better serve my customer. By the way, feel to screenshot this. Okay, this is yours to keep. Run with it. So, how would I hack this? Well, I would start off very, very much by looking at push, not pull tactics. Right. So, in the case study that I just went over about the influencer, she started posting the bottles. She started posting, I wore this and blah, 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 blah. No one was really looking for that, first of all. Not to mention, how many advertisements do you really remember? If you drive, how many billboards do you remember over the last 48 hours? If you're not a driver, whatever the case, how many of the advertisements that you've seen or billboards you've seen across the street do you actually remember? That is a push tactic, sorry. So in layman's terms, a push tactic, I want you to think of you walk to a car dealership and the car sales guy or girl comes up to you, hi, I'm going to sell you this car. A pull tactic is you Googling the best dealership in town. You looking online for the best deal on town and finding something. That is a pull tactic. So that also leads me to social media. You're probably noticing a trend here. Social media is another great way for me to find out if they're not actually privy to how this works. You will see pages that don't actually speak to you. They're just a never-ending circular. They're never-ending sales. It's just like 50% off, 20% off. Look at this bottle, product bottle, 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 that. Or there's no congruency in message. So if a product or service, let's use a product. The product is meant to, better your life, feel better, be smarter, whatever the case may be. But the whole page is just comprised of like maybe a testimonial, a whole bunch of product shots. I know, awesome. That is a huge gap they're leaving open. They haven't connected to anybody and their operating expenses are very high because if there's anything I've learned, and you probably are starting to gather yourself, it's cheaper to keep her. It's a phrase that I learned along the way, but ultimately it's cheaper to keep a good customer than to go out and get new ones constantly. Very important. Moving along to mistake number 3. Again, you're noticing a congruency here. They don't actually know their customer. Now, in the previous one that I shared with you, right? As you can tell, when you do things that way, it gets very expensive, which is, by the way, a lot of people will tell me, oh, Kat, I don't have the money for this. I don't have the money for marketing. That's essentially like telling me you don't have a resume, but you're looking for a job. So very quickly, this is kind of like a cheat sheet. On average, only 3% of any market is ready to buy. So how do we know who's ready? You get to know your customer. There was this event company that I worked with not too long ago, well, very shortly because it was not a good fit. And here's why. Their whole intent was to build a community, lead said community, break barriers, all this inspirational stuff. And I'm not going to lie, when I first heard about it, I'm like, hell yeah, man, tell me more. But alas, unfortunately, they led with their agenda. ignored the very people that they needed to fill those seats, to fill that stage. Sounds counterintuitive, right? But guess what? That's from your point of view. From their point of view, oh man, they were rocket scientists. They were gonna kick ass. They were sitting there with all these glitz and glamour, and I got this brand and that brand to come and attend my event. And that was great. But then guess what? Every single time that I put something in front of them, said, here, go talk to your audience, engage your audience, really get to know them. We don't have time for that. So they would try things for about a day or two, and then boom. Which led them to, you guessed it, push tactics. And those push tactics get very expensive. So they got creative, and they're like, well, you know what? We don't have to spend a bunch of money. We'll just give out tickets for free. So they start giving out tickets for free, start pushing the seats, and blah, blah, blah. But now you've just filled a bunch of seats for free. Again, all this hoopla, all this making things more complicated for what? You know, you're now relying on money. You're now relying on freebies. You completely missed the point of what this whole thing was. Ultimately, that company ended up just being a flash in the pan, doing more of the same, and had to rely on a huge cash injection just to get through the day. And frankly, didn't really accomplish much. And here's why. The easiest way, most effective way, I should say, is diagnose, don't sell. Okay? I shared something on my Instagram not too long ago and to my members where I showed them the actual bar graph that says very blatantly the trust factor amongst different professions. Sales marketers had neck and neck with politicians. They had neck and neck statistics, with politicians. So salespeople and marketers were as trustworthy as politicians, whereas friends, family, and doctors all passed the 80% mark. And what do you notice about friends, family, and doctors? They have high trust factors. Well, you trust the doctor because the doctor, he or she went to school, went through the whole process, and they're there to help you. Well, at least for those of you who are not paranoid about the process, but I digress. So very simply, it comes down to, how do we hack this? I'm you. What do I do? You're me. What do you do? Something that you can very, very quickly, by the way, as you're watching this, you can even click pause and go check this out, just so you see the proof in the pudding. If you see a heavy reliance on discounts, now I want to give you a very good scenario of how this works. Think of Groupon, okay? Groupon makes a shit ton of money, but the businesses that use Groupon have reportedly been so fucked when they use the service because sure, they sell a lot of tickets, but they take a $10 item, discount it to $5, put it on Groupon. Groupon takes 50%, 30%, whatever. So they made $2.50 on what they normally make $10. Sell a bunch of it. And then those people, the return rate of those customers is below 13%. I don't know about you, but if you start all of a sudden making 20% of the money that you make today, right, just to get out there on the maybe promise that you see more money, and then you don't see that money, is that something you continue doing? Well, the thing is that that feeds customer behavior. So when a company, even the ones that don't use Groupon, when companies rely too heavily on ads, it's because they never actually got to know their customer. So they now are working to convince you to buy their product. So they're constantly running a sale. They've got to buy one this, but get that one, 20% off, 30% off, invite a friend and get 15% off. Click on this thing and you get 15% off. You start seeing too much of that, I'm just letting you know they don't know their customer. That is something that you can immediately exploit. And you're going to see it again. Social media. Social media, their reliance on ads. Because they don't know their customer, they don't have good engagement. Because they don't have good engagement, they're sitting there scratching their heads. How do we get in front of more people? Do we pay an influencer? Oh, but we don't know how to pick an influencer. Oh shit, I have an idea. I watch a course on Facebook ads. Or I get some whiz kid, pay him $1,000 and have him do my Facebook ads. and you'll see their ads all over the place. The thing is that Facebook ads, etc., they become so heavily relied on that it is now saturated. I don't know about you, but if you've watched a YouTube video, do you stop and watch every ad? When you're on Facebook, do you stop and look at every ad? The thing is that every time you scroll past that ad, someone pays for it. That gets expensive. So really quickly, you're able to go out there and test this right away. Now we're getting to the fun stuff, guys. Shiny object syndrome is very funny to me because if I were to give you a picture of what it looks like, best one I can think of. Think of it. If you're parents, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not a parent, next time you go to the store, Target, Walmart, supermarket, whatever, just look at a parent with the kids. Kids are throwing stuff in a basket, hiding donuts in there, treats, chocolate, you know. If it's a super small baby like in this aisle, odds are that orange thing over there on the right and all those purple signs are going to catch its attention. Well, it's exactly what it looks like. Very much what it looks like in a company. And we can go down a million scenarios, but it leaves clues. And one of the easiest ways that it leaves clues within a company is you're going to start seeing actions that they don't look detrimental at first, by the way. They're just going to look like, oh, they're growing it. And they can even spin it and say that they're growing. But it's a disease of a distraction. Okay? By the way, screenshot this if you want to save it. And essentially, it's just like that CEO or the owner, whatever, it's like a kid chasing after shiny objects. Hey, this person promised me 50% more sales. I'm going to hire him. Or this chick told me that Facebook ads is the next big wave. I got to get on that. And then they don't listen to anything. They don't even bother looking at the data. They just pull the trigger. How do we hack that? I say it. Always leaves clues. One of the quickest ways that I've noticed that a company is suffering from this is changes in team. And I mean, it's actually connected to the second one, changes in look. You're going to notice at the beginning of the year, they're like this. The next quarter, they're like that. This quarter, they're working with this person. Next quarter, they're working with that person. Their website changed. They migrated. Now, all of a sudden, they're on a different platform. They're scrapping Instagram. Now they're full-time on LinkedIn and blah, blah, blah. Now, again, there is people making movements for progress. And then there's others that do it sloppily. And I'm pretty sure you're starting to notice that there's a difference. Okay? Changes in team are going to look something like this. If all of a sudden, this company is the next hot thing since like sliced bread, and then all of a sudden they're radio silent, right? On Instagram, Facebook, whatever. And then like 3 months later, they pop back up. Guys, we did this cool thing. Yeah, that's not going to work. That's not going to work simply because you're now able to see, something's not lining up. Something's not lining up because if they're constantly doing these moves for improvement, then why are they not consistent with their brand message, their advertising, their marketing, right? Another thing I look for is lingo reliant. Now, this one's a little bit more, I guess we can call it behind the scenes on my end. And what I've noticed time and time again, when they change that team, they tend to change the team based on a promise. And that promise tends to come along the lines of, I am the best in my field, and specifically in your field, Mr. or Mrs. CEO. I'm going to say all these pretty things and convince you, and then once they come in, they just fluff up several things. So when I say lingo reliant, if you've ever gone on a website, and you see that it's, when I say lingo reliant, let's say you go on a website, and it's for, let me think of something, a health supplement. You're going to notice a lot of a lot of science. The benefits are probably like 3-4 words, and then like everything else encompasses the rest of it. That's lack of customer journey. That's lack of brand promise and knowing your customer. I don't know about you, but when a doctor prescribes you a pill, do you sit there with the doctor and go over all your ingredients? Or does the doctor just sit there and just read every single ingredient in that product to you? That's what I mean by lingo reliant, okay? And Last but not least, ego. As I said before, first three are about company, last two are about you. And by you, I mean team, founder, CEO, whatever the case may be. So this one is a lot of fun for me. It's a lot of fun for me because there's those weird moments in doing what I do when I sit there and I tell somebody, hey, you've got holes in your ship, fix them or you will drown. And I don't know if you've ever seen those movies with the big storm coming and the scientist got his hair all disheveled and he's yelling at people, he's fumbling papers, he's like, guys, save yourselves. I can't tell you how many times I felt like that guy. So this company, very related in terms of how ego got in the way and how it spilled over. So this company, the CEO was a bottleneck. And bottleneck, if you haven't caught on to it yet, bottleneck means that nothing gets through that person. As in, even if you have employees, that person is ultimately the decision maker. The problem with that is that that person is usually the only one making decisions, steering the ship, etc. So they're not actually relying on expertise other than their own. Okay? Imagine going to a foreign land. You only speak English. That's essentially how it works. So this person or at least was in control of the message, the look, everything over social media, website, brand message, right? Now, as I said, it all leaves clues. Well, guess what? They all sounded like they were being said by the same person. Okay? And now, what that led to was the company started to run like his success story. The whole premise of everything, it went away from the customers that they were looking to help and improve their lives and all this other stuff. It all became about the science, jargon, and their success story. Nothing, if ever, really celebrated the customer. Okay? And of course, that led to a lot of other problems. Some of the symptoms included operating on radio silence. Okay? And then when when the shit started to hit the fan, guess what they did? They didn't actually sit there and try to fix it. No. They just doubled down. They doubled down. Now, what does this look like on the opposite side? This is more of a happy story. On the opposite side, it looks like this. If you've never seen this gum or not familiar with it, I introduced you to Juicy Fruit. Wrigley's gum of everything. And it was started by William Wrigley. Now, William Wrigley, man, he's one of my favorite case studies. I told you I was a nerd about this stuff. This man went out there selling soap, door to door. And as an incentive, his way of having some hospitality, he would offer baking soda. And, after a while, he started noticing a substantial part of his customer base, his leads, were like, William, Billy, let me get some of that baking soda. I love it. It's really helpful. It's great for keeping things fresh. It's great for cooking. It's great for cleaning. Give me some more. So, removes his ego. And then instead, starts selling baking powder. After some time, he added a new incentive. And he adds gum. And as time progresses, people start hitting him up. Billy, love that gum. Does it come in this flavor? What does the guy do? He goes and creates that flavor. And on and on and on he goes. And ultimately comes up with a product that you see everywhere. The guy got rich off of gum, and he started off with soap. And it all came from listening to his customers, knowing his customer, and also realizing that branding, marketing, and advertising are different things. His brand was, I want to help you live better. His marketing was, I'm coming door to door. I'm that guy that's going to get it for you. And his advertising was, when I give it to you, I'm going to give you a little bit more happiness. And the proof's in the pudding. So, how do we hack this? I'm you, you're me. What do we do? Some weaknesses we look for is the company doubles down. Blockbuster doubled down and said, fuck Netflix, right? Spells of silence, followed by a huge PR push. The company that I mentioned right before Wrigley, they lost half of their freaking staff, lost all of their money, and what did they do? They're so unstable. They ultimately end up not going out of business, but being acquired. They ended up being acquired, and the first thing that happened as soon as they were acquired is the controlling interest went to someone else. And that controlling interest said, we've got to revitalize this guy. So we're going to do a huge PR push. So if you see something go quiet, 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 and a huge PR push, and it just seems contrived, that's usually a clue that something was a little awry. And why that's important to you is because that tells you there's a huge gap between them and their customer. And if there's anything that I've learned, it does not cost a lot of money to keep a happy customer. Wrigley didn't go broke giving out free baking soda, and he definitely did not go broke giving out free gum. And the figurehead. Now, I'm going to, again, this is a little bit more of a like behind the scenes, right? Well, in both cases, you have a figurehead. In one case, you have Wrigley. But Wrigley's is, I'm the problem solver. And in the other, that figurehead is, I am the champion. I oversaw the odds. Literally has nothing to do with the product. See my point? Very important to remember this. So, let's say you're watching this, you screenshot some of the stuff that I shared with you. Where do you start today? Well, first things first is you really have to take the time to practice this exercise. Okay? Excuse me. So if you watch this, and about half of the way you're like, oh, fuck this guy. Or along the way, you're like, fuck this guy. Well, I'm going to share this a little bit with you. What do you do today if you're reading this and you're like, oh shit, this kind of applies to me? Well, first things first, buddy, simplify. I cannot stress this enough. I could actually remove everything from the rest of this list and it'll still get you the same result. Simplify. You can't do everything. And I don't care if you don't have money. It's never lack of money. It's lack of a creative idea. Okay? Revisit your brand. Revisit what the hell you're doing in the first place. Why are you doing what you're doing? Who are you looking to serve? Okay? And in doing so, how are you doing that? Who's your team? Who is in what role and who is in what responsibility? And by the way, notice I said not lack of money, lack of creative idea. Even if you don't have the means right now to sit there and pay a whole team of employees, guess what? Get creative. First things first, if you don't have the money to pay your team right now, find someone to partner up with part-time and pay them accordingly. Give them a real cut in what you're doing. You know why? Because you have money to make. The more money that comes in, you are now able to pay for the other things. If you're greedy now, you'll never, ever keep it. And of course, start today. Now, my audience, my friend, my new friend, where do you start today if you're the hacker? If you're the person sitting there with, I'm watching this because I kind of want to see what I could do in this situation. Well, guess what? Here's what we're about to get into. Nail down your brand promise. Nail down your brand promise, which, by the way, we're about to do right now. Map out your dream team. Very important. Roles, responsibilities, etc. Understand who your customer is, which comes from your brand promise. Carve out your niche, what comes from knowing who your customer is. And then practice this audit on those in your industry. Those hacks, those behind the scenes that I showed you, go out there and try them. You know why? Because once you spot their mistakes, guess what you're not going to do? Repeat those mistakes. The past is built on patterns, and patterns are built on people. And simplify. If you see them fucking up in some way, we'll find out how can I simplify the process and still do it more effectively. You also want to experiment and quantify your ideas. My personal opinion doesn't matter here. What actually matters is the proof in the pudding, and the proof in the pudding always says the same. Elon Musk is a visionary. Doesn't matter what you think about him, whatever. Ultimately, the guy gets shit done, and guess what? It's not on his gut feeling. He didn't just wake up and say, oh, dude, I had a crazy trip. I'm going to go invest $120 million in this. I know it looks that way from the exterior, just like Richard Branson, but it doesn't work that way. The way it works is I have a hypothesis, and I'm about to go out there and experiment it, get a minimal viable product, and then go live. All right? Now the fun part. We're going to go through a brand promise exercise. We're going to keep it short. We're going to keep it sweet because we're going to simplify. Now, you can screenshot this, but I'm going to go down the list with you. Now, 3 things you help my customer be. Do you help me be more confident? Do you help me be healthier? Do you help me be happier? Do you help me sleep better? These are just examples of what would go in that column. And I'm giving you examples because every time I do this exercise, people tend to get very convoluted and give me sentences. No, words. Literally, just give me a word or describe something. What do you help the customer do? Live longer, sleep better. By the way, this pause was for you to fill in the blank there. What do you help them do? For example, by the way, after this, I'm going to share with you my brand promise to give you an example of what it looks like after you finish breaking it down. The do part is very important because the do part is the pivotal part of your brand promise. By the way, the brand promise becomes your why, what your company's known for. Right? So the do part is going to be very important. So it's important to like, okay, if I sell bicycles, cool, I sell bicycles. There's a bunch of bicycles, but what is my bicycle going to do different? And this exercise is fun because of that. Because a lot of people are like, well, what makes mine different? Well, this bicycle allows you to ride further, faster, without harming your back, without harming your feet. It has safety features. So in essence, what it helps you do is enjoy an active lifestyle safer than everyone else. That's very wordy, but you get the idea, right? Same thing with a product. The product helps you perform better. Like Nike. Nike is a sneaker brand, but it also has ancillary products. Clothing, this, that, the third. But ultimately, what does it help you do? It helps you be more athletic, but it also helps you jump faster. At least that's the emotion that it gives you. So the do is essentially the emotion that it would elicit based on their goals, which is why it's very important to get to know your customer. And then the have, the achieve, right? It could also say achieve. What did you help customer help them have? Well, that have could be longer life. That have could be, for example, in my brand promise, it's literally my true north, is improve our quality of life. Everything I do here, right? You using this and you employ it and you put it into practice and you put out a perfect product and their service, makes your customers happy and you make more money. Guess what? I met my brand promise. We improved our quality of life. So that's something that you won't have it maybe on the first try, but once you get the be and the do, you get to sit there and run it and to ask people, which is very important, which actually is the next part. You run a usability test. A usability test is what you're going to go and talk to your prospective consumers, your existing consumers, and ask them, hey, does this connect with you? And also, does it connect with you? You asking them the question. Is this something that you can say at a cocktail party, at a networking event, at the movies, when you meet someone and shake their hand? Hi, I do such and such. Very important. And why? Back to this. Because on average, only 3% of the market is ready to buy. And now that 3% of the market, it's not about converting them. It's really, is there something new? Hey, cool, let's go. Those are known as early adopters. And then on average, 3% of every market is ready to buy. So if you can sit there and take a piece of that pie will essentially, you'll be building up to the 30%. Imagine the piece of a pie, or 3% of $1 billion pie. It's a lot of money. So, how do you get ready? Scale and automate it. Well, I tried something. As I said, I like to test everything. So I tried something. I released something. I called it Change the Game Challenge. And these were the very questions that I led with, right? I took my brand promise, put it out there. How did it go? It went just like this. I said, Joe Schmo, Jane Joe, do you have a goal to earn more free time? Yes. The ones that said no, oh, okay, shit, my bad, not for you. The ones that said yes, cool. Would you like better understanding and leverage in your career or business? Fuck yeah, Carlito, let's go. And of course, do you want better profits? Doing what you already do or know. Of course, learning is great, but ultimately, if we can maneuver this, right, just change a few little tweaks, nothing crazy, you want better profits. Because at the end of the day, if you're a good business owner, you're able to manage that. And of course, I said, hey, look, bring your hunger. I'll bring the years and years of strategies. And it went fairly well. Because the very first things we were looking to do is scale and automate the marketing and sales, scale and automate a well-oiled machine, as I showed you before, the growth team, the platform and dominate it, a content factory, which is awesome because that's another thing that I constantly heard. Dude, I don't know what content to create. And when I do create content, why don't I ever get traction? Well, that's very important. And then once you get the content factory gone, we then moved on to moving into a crowded market. How do you dominate a room? You know, it's hard. And this has been very fun for me because we've gone into like airline industries, beauty industry, CBD industry, cannabis industry. I can go on and on. And of course, the ultimate goal is build a kick-ass team. One of the last people that took the challenge, by the way, it's on my Instagram too if you want, is Shane, health and fitness entrepreneur. Great guy. Came in with a product that was amazing. It was ultimately created, and it was originally created to help people sleep better. But seeing what he did, seeing what he loved, seeing his community ties, he found a market, which was first responders. Starts working with first responders. The first responders like cops, paramedics, EMTs, opens up 3-4 more markets. So as he expands, he's just doing more of what he already did. He's simplifying things, and he's just now cranking it up and scaling and making more money. Then we have Yasu. I don't know about you, but these guys have it rough. Finance, wealth guys, bankers. These guys get it rough. This right here, this is an example of when you automate and scale the right things, simplify things. Everything's a work in progress, of course, but at the end of the day, put in the time. Got Matt, an attorney, working with him, short amount of time, was able to sit there and realize, remember I said, knowing your customer, knowing your brand promise, holy shit, I'm sitting on a pot of gold here. And he's since moved on to a different industry altogether. He's kicking ass in the South, loving every minute of it. Naka from the UK, same thing. In the IT field, and I don't know about you, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the IT field is brutal. There's not a lot of charisma going along in the IT field, but guess what? In a very short amount of time, this person went from grunt to leader. Same thing, entrepreneur. Joe Taylor, awesome guy, went from solopreneur. He's kicking ass, guys, seriously. And Joe, if you're watching this, God bless you, brother. Guy's doing French Montana, NBA players, etc., because he dominates and owns his market. I appreciate you spending this time with me, and I encourage feedback, questions, and if you'd like a copy of this and a copy of a branding guide. So we did the brand promise exercise. Well, I also have a branding guide that I put together. Just shoot me an email, ksrfadi@growthhacks.com. I'm also on Instagram as Nerd Gone Rogue. Thank you for watching, and remember, create, don't compete.